Howdy. My name is Chris Raymer. I'm Recovery Community Director at La Hacienda, and I am delighted to be with you guys. It's a Friday afternoon out here in Hunt, Texas, and you might hear some noise out here in a little bit. All the guys are fixing to go out for high ropes, and it's, you know, what a nice deal that we've got a good, safe place to come, and we got a place full of patients, and guys, some of them are actually looking like they're going to get well. So I'm tickled to death to have them, and this will be cool. I'm gonna cover. Last one we did, I did the mental obsession piece. I wrapped up that first step stuff, and this one I'm gonna talk specifically about steps 2 and 3. Again, this is short. We're not doing this in-depth study. This little overview kind of helps some of you get. I don't know. If nothing else, it'll give you something to do when you're stuck at home, and we're delighted to be able to produce it. I wanted to mention before we get going, I've got this little index. I give this to a lot of the patients, and if any of y'all are out there, especially some of you older guys that have been gone a long time. I came back about 1.5 years ago, but I had this little index that I used to hand out. Basically, it just says where the steps are in the book, and it's a nice little guide. I have one folded up in my big book all the time, so if I'm working with a newcomer and he wants to talk about the 9th step, then I can go straight to the pages. The chapters are not divided up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's divided. There's multiple steps in subsequent chapters. So this is just help kind of unconfuse that for you. If you want it, I can send it to you, little Dropbox, and email me. At the end of this, there'll be my little email and my phone number stuff, and I encourage all of y'all to stay in touch. Any of y'all want to do that? Y'all get tired of me saying this. I was overwhelmed with how many people emailed me and texted me, called me on the phone. Some of the old guys that I hadn't seen in a whole bunch of years. I left originally in 2010, but I'd been here 17 years before that. So, just like old home week, getting to see some of you folks. And I'll mention, some of these guys, a lot of folks stayed sober, all right? Because that's what happens. You do what you're supposed to do. A lot of us stay sober. And then there were some that had relapsed and back on track, and some of them were still in trouble. And I just need to mention this, because I do sometimes when I get the opportunity with the patients that we have here. I know some of y'all are embarrassed if you leave treatment and you go through some rough water and you get sick again and relapse. Some of y'all you're so embarrassed about that. And I know you are, and nothing I'm going to say is going to change that. But let me tell you, you're embarrassed. We're just delighted to hear from you. We're excited that you're still alive and kicking. And guys, there's always another chance. There's this. If we don't die out there, there's always another chance. And just know that we love hearing from you, whether you're sober or not. We don't ever want to lose track. You're an alumni from here. You will be till the day you die. So we love you. You got to stick close, and it'll be a good thing. I mentioned, as I do at the beginning of every one of these little workshops we're going to do all 12 steps, and I want to mention that we want to try to get this out to as many alumni as we can. I'm not doing this for public dissemination out there with the AA community. We have a thing called a 6th tradition that suggests that we don't do that, and so I'm sending it out there and hoping that you guys will share it with your friends, anybody that you want to, but understand this is a treatment center, and I will be talking about treatment things here, and this is not any kind of a 12-step fellowship meeting. So bless you. I appreciate y'all helping us out with that. If you look in your book, I know you got one. Look on page 58 and 59 are where the actual steps are in the big book. Step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Pretty simple. It's going to boil down to one question. Step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Those are the 2 things we're going to look at. And the ABCs at the end of the steps, or how it works, where it talks about the ABCs, that on number C it says that God could and would if He were sought. It doesn't say if He were found. So many people, get so, they want to make this way more complicated than it has to be. It's really, really simple. And we're not here to force anybody to believe a certain way, or everybody gets to have their own experience. I know the spiritual literature that I read, I don't care what doctrine we're reading, it always talks about the same thing. God will meet us where we are. You don't have to have this great understanding of theology or understanding of the Bible or anything to be able to get this. And to kind of simplify this is what I'm hoping to do. With the guys I'm sitting down, I'm sponsoring, I'm getting real simple with it. One of the things I mentioned, I was in a meeting not long ago, and there's this lady, you hear it all the time, but I just remember her. She's a sweetheart, but she was saying in a meeting, and she was talking, you know, if I walked into my first AA meeting and they were talking about all this God stuff, I never would have stayed. And everybody's shaking their head and nodding. You know, I'm a little frustrated with that, because if the solution, the big book says, is a relationship with our Creator, a higher power, whatever you want to call it, but we're afraid to talk about it because we're afraid that we're going to offend somebody, then we're kind of defeating our purpose. The assumption, real quick, that the newcomer can't handle the conversation about a spiritual experience, at best is confusing, and at worst it's fatal. I think we really have to stop. In chapter of the agnostics, up to page 44, we've been talking from the doctor's opinion up, we were talking about the first step stuff. All of that was talking about trying to qualify you as an alcoholic or an addict, physical craving, mental obsession. From 44 on up a few pages, what we're talking about is this we're immediately getting into the solution. But there's a line in there, I'm not going to turn to it, but there's a line in there that says that half of us had a problem with God. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what it says, which means the other half didn't have a problem with God. I mean, we go in and assuming that the person you're talking to is wrapped around the axle around this idea of God and the spiritual solution. And the truth is, they may not be. They may be good church folks. They may not ever have any contempt or prejudice against spirituality at all. So let's don't set them up beginning with. If you're working with a newcomer, you know, let's feel them out. I think you could make a bad approach if you start preaching to them, but nowhere in the book does it say or even suggest that we do that. All we're going to do is we're going to show them, ask them to have an open mind that perhaps maybe something else out there greater than ourselves could help us stay on this path. And that was my experience a whole bunch of years ago. I never really had a problem. I was raised in the church. I wasn't a very good church person, but never really had a problem. I had me a little barn-burning spiritual experience when I was 18, and it lasted for like a couple of days. I mean, the glow of that was pretty profound. I'll never forget it. But you know, I got out there and got sideways with everybody, and the alcoholism and drug addiction was in full swing by then. By the time I was 18, I was drinking alcoholically, of course, and got separated from that power. I always knew that there was something out there. Figured, you know, that many people couldn't be wrong, but as far as feeling connected to that power, guys, I was completely disconnected, and I wasn't going to take a shot at anybody. But I think one of the mistakes we make in our fellowships today is that we spend a lot of times talking to people and kind of making fun of the idea that this is about God, and we need to stop. If you don't hear anything else I'm saying in this short 30-minute little talk, please hear this. This is unapologetically about God. This is not a self-help program. This is a spiritual program of action. Those are Bill Wilson's words, not mine. A spiritual program of action, we can do that. But I'm not going to water the message down. There's a great quote somebody sent me the other day, and I don't know who said it, but it's a fine quote. The reunion with one's own Creator is truly life's highest experience. To rob a person of this experience by offering and leading him towards something less should be classified as a crime. Oh man, I love that, because it's the truth. Let's you kind of cut to the chase here, because you're only going to hear me periodically through these little talks I'm doing with you. Alcoholics Anonymous, NA, all the 12-step fellowships out there, folks. There's a lot of people in our fellowships that are not real alcoholics, not real drug addicts. And I'm not taking a shot at those people. Bless them. There's a lot of people come into our rooms that have mental problems. They're just lonely and looking for a place to go. Bring them on. They're welcome. Dadgummit, they're absolutely welcome. But those people don't depend on a spiritual experience in order to stay sober. All they do is make up their mind to stay sober, and then they do that. So just be careful who you're listening to, folks. Bill Wilson, again, we were talking about it in the last lecture, the last little talk, was saying specifically, guys, we're talking about the real alcoholic, the real little dope fiend. This guy, life depends on getting connected spiritually. So that's where we're kind of coming through all of this, and you know, the necessity to try to understand this, I think, is really important. When I'm sitting down with a little newcomer and I qualify him and find out he's really one of us, one of the things we talked about is, of course, once you get that death sentence that is alcoholism or drug addiction, you become pretty open-minded about doing some of the rest of this stuff. But the second step, there's a question in there. The big book calls it's the second step proposition. God either is or he isn't. Are you willing to believe that there's something out there bigger than you? Now, if I'm sitting there talking to a little newcomer and he says, well, maybe there is, I don't know, then we move on. So many times you get into a conversation, guys, with some of these folks, and they, absolutely not, I don't believe in God. Okay, I didn't ask you if you believed in God. I asked you if you were willing to believe there was something out there maybe bigger than you. No. Okay, all right. Well, there you go. Listen, you want to go get a hamburger? Because we're done here. Because see, my job is not to talk them into being open-minded about this. If you've already made up your mind that you're not going to believe in a power greater than yourself at any level, you don't have to believe with the passion of the martyrs. Guys, we're not asking for that. Just an open mind. Bill Wilson, I get a lot of people, especially some of my atheist friends, that want to take shots at chapter to the exhausting. But I think it's pretty open. I've got a great paper I can send you to, written by a guy down in Florida. Wonderful paper that talks specifically about the problem with all of this confusion. The atheists have wonderful fellowships just for them, where we don't talk about God at all. Some of our AA literature doesn't talk about God at all. You're welcome. I'm not being exclusive to anyone. Please, please, please. But understand, Bill Wilson was pretty clear, guys. No matter what kind of contempt you want to bring into this, if you'll keep an open mind, my experience is, if the little guy on step 2 says, well, maybe there is something out there, then let's go. My goodness, let's help him get on through this work, because my experience is, once you start doing this work, I've never seen anybody get in there, get up to their neck in making amends and not have spiritual experiences. And by the time you're working with a newcomer, like sponsoring people, oh gee, buddy, you get to see the power of God on a daily basis. It's just through other people. It's absolutely wonderful to watch. Guys, it's like riding up that big old hill on a bicycle. You know, I get out on that bicycle and you look up that hill, he says, I'm never going to be able to get there. Put your head down, stop looking at the top of the hill, and start pedaling. I did it last night. I rode 33 miles last night. There's hills out there that I'm riding, and it's like, oh man, I'll never make it. Just put your head down and pedal, you'll make it. And all of a sudden you get to the top, and just like Bill Wilson, your mind opens up, and I don't know what your spiritual experience is going to look like, folks. I do not know. I get people in our fellowships always talking about there's a barn burning kind of a spiritual experience where you get to see a blinding light, whatever. Bill Wilson's in Towns Hospital detoxing, for heaven's sakes, when he has his barn burning spiritual experience. It's just pretty amazing. I know a lot of people that have had experiences like that. I know a lot of people that have had what we call educational variety spiritual experiences. That, just like what I'm talking about, they put their head down, they punched on through this work, and in the process of doing this work, here's the little issue man and issue woman, my friends here, all the stuff that's between them and that power, the resentments, the fear, all this crazy stuff, shame, guilt, all the stuff that they're feeling that's blocking them from the sunlight of the Spirit, as the book talks about, it gets separated, gets blown away, and all of a sudden you look up and you're at the top of the hill. You're kicking butt, and that's what it's about, guys. Don't be discouraged because you don't understand this. And I'm going to tell you, in sponsorship, let's don't spend too much time trying to figure out what their experience is going to be. Let's just let them have that experience. A lot of people out there want to talk a lot about God. We've treated it at this facility. We treat a lot of. I've personally sponsored a lot of clergymen, people of the cloth, who believe in God, who know a lot about God, but have been disconnected from that power. Otherwise, they wouldn't keep drinking. Can y'all see that? By doing the work, this is not about whoever believes in God the most is going to have the spiritual. That's not it. It's the people that believe there might be a power and the people that actually do the work. It's cause and effect. So don't be embarrassed or mad at yourself because you don't understand the Bible or don't understand the spiritual doctrine or whatever. Just come at it with an open mind and put your head down and start doing it. I had an old friend that passed away a long time ago, a guy named Sandy B, and a lot of y'all have heard his tapes. He's been around, his talks are wonderful. He's got an excellent little book out there too. But one of the things he used to say from the podium a lot, like I said, he's passed away a long time, but he wonderful guy. He said, you don't have to find God, but you have to look. That was so perfect for me, and so many little guys I sponsor that want to do the pushback on this. Just look, because I've never known anybody that looked that didn't find. It's just y'all are more than welcome to call me anytime if you want to talk about more of that. It's just it's one of the things that we got to pursue, and I just think it's important that we do. Have an open mind. That's all basic. That's the old expression the old timers used to say. That is the other name for the agnostics. Chapter of the agnostics. And it says the other name was change your mind. Just stop being so dogmatic. You can be so right, you're wrong. So for heaven's sakes, if you look over on page 52, there's these things called the bedevilments. A lot of y'all hear us talk about it. We talk about this, and I touched on some of this with a spiritual malady in that last lecture. But the bedevilments, this stuff internally, I'm going to read the paragraph for you. It says, we were having trouble in personal relationships. How about the stuff internally, yourself? How about that relationship with yourself? We were trouble in personal relationships. We couldn't control our emotional natures. That's me. We were prey to misery and depression. We couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. We were full of fear. We were unhappy. Oh my gosh. Guys, that's the stuff that gets us. When I stop drinking and drugging, this stuff starts to come through the top. And this is why it's so necessary for us to absolutely recover. Otherwise, what we're doing is we're walking through life just dry. And the old timers used to call it sobriety. I'm not interested in that. I want to be, I talked about it the other day, guys. I'm not living off a spiritual experience I had 32 years ago. I did have a spiritual experience. I've had many spiritual experiences in the interim time. I had a spiritual experience the other night on a conference call, one of those Zoom talks that we're all doing, and I was talking to a group in Chicago. It turned out a whole bunch of my friends from around the country had called into that meeting, so I got to see a bunch of my old guys down the island and a bunch of one of my best friends over in Virginia. They were all on that call, and I got to see them, and I got to tell you, I hung up that phone, and there was a connectedness with it of those folks that I hadn't experienced in a long time, not even sitting in my own AA group. Pretty cool. Again, try to keep an open mind, guys, because we're not talking about a life where you've got to spend miserable the rest of your life. That's not what we're talking about. I want you to look real quick, page 62. A lot of y'all end up getting on this page. It's a great topic for a meeting. Selfish and self-centeredness, that we think is the root of the problems, our troubles. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows. It's, oh my gosh. Let me just go ahead and read it. Sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find at some time in the past we've made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic or drug addict is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. No kidding. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of selfishness. We must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. next paragraph, it says we had to have God's help. I mean, guys, Bill Wilson's painting a really clear picture here. Alcohol and drugs is not the problem. I know everybody thinks it is, but I can get detoxed. I can stop drinking. I just can't stay stopped. My head eventually, downstream a few days or a few weeks, will start feeling... self-pity is what kills most of us as alcoholics and addicts, guys. Just anecdotally, there's no scientific studies, but most of you out there, ask yourself... if your relapses were keyed into that thing called self-pity. God, guys, I'd be going to some meetings and just get tired, and I'd ask some girl out and she'd say no, and I'd get my little feelings hurt and wah and just go get drunk. It had nothing to do with the girl. It had to do with what was going on inside and that spiritual warfare I'm feeling with my little voice in my ear saying, you're a worthless piece of you-know-what. You'll never amount to anything. You can't help anybody. Why don't you just end this? And I'll go buy a 6-pack of Lone Star Light. Nothing but the best for Chris Raymer. And I'm off to the stupid races one more time. But always, well, self-pity. And I'm not making enough money. I'm not good enough. You know, I'm blind in one eye. Oh my God. Yeah. No. I need God's help, folks, to stop my little head all these years later from telling myself some of those lies. I want to show you something real quick. The third step promises are on the top of page 63. When we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. We had a new employer. Being all-powerful, he provided what we needed if we kept close to him and performed his work well. Him, he, she, it. You guys can substitute the words that you want. Established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. More and more, we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life as we felt new power flow in. Power, folks. As we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of His presence, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, and hereafter. We were reborn. Folks, I got to tell you, I'm fixing to read this little prayer, but I want to absolutely, gosh, in today's society right now, what we're going through with this stupid virus stuff, how many of us in here need to kind of revisit this? How many of us need to really look at this idea of powerlessness? I know there's a lot of fear and a lot of uncertainty, but let's be reminded, maybe from this, that there's a power out there in charge, and it ain't us. And we're going to do the next right thing and try to help the people we can and watch and see how this all plays out. I don't know what God's got planned for any of us, folks, but I got to tell you, it's going to be a pretty cool thing to watch. I'm sitting out there absolutely amazed at how close some of us are becoming simply because of this virus. You never know. I don't know. I look at issue man and woman. I look at all the X's, and you know, guys, I don't know. I don't know where you're supposed to work or who you're supposed to be with or where you're supposed to live. I'm going to tell you this. If you're doing the things you're supposed to be doing and you get connected, I promise you that there's some guidance that's coming. Because I guarantee you, God will guide you. God will show you where you're supposed to work. God will take care of those finances. I know I'm starting to sound like a Baptist preacher up here. I'll stop. But pay attention, because this could happen, all right? This could change you. One of the things I want to point out to you in this prayer, one of the things it's asking us to do, it says, relieve me of the bondage of self. One of the lines, that I may better do thy will. Relieve me of the bondage of self. It didn't say, we were just reading it on 62, but it didn't say, relieve me of the bondage of crack cocaine. It's not saying that. That's done. That's a foregone conclusion. It's the noose around my neck is my head that tells me I don't need to do this work. I'm not that bad. I don't need to do that resentment inventory. I don't need to make amends to those people. That's the selfishness that we're dealing with, guys. And Bill, this is brilliant on Bill's part. It's the selfish and self-centeredness that gets me in trouble. That's what sober, I am perfectly capable of making some really stupid mistakes based on self. Beautiful, beautiful prayer. The other thing it says in here is that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. What this prayer does, folks, it asks us to bear witness to God's power. It's asking us that when we get in here and we start doing this work and we get that big promotion at work, or all of a sudden we get approved for that car loan, or, I'll remember those things changing. I mean, I didn't have anything when I got to the fellowships. And as these things started happening, I'm remembering the third step, and I'm supposed to go into those meetings and I'm supposed to tell those little newcomers how my life is changing. Yes, there's problems, but I need to talk about how I got through that problem. I owed everybody in the world. The IRS was knocking on my door. I driving an old beat up pickup truck, and as I got better, and God continued to guide my life. Oh, that's how I ended up working at La Hacienda. That's no coincidence. I was never going to be in the hill country. All of a sudden, I'm back in the hill country, and the miracle starts to take place, folks. There's no place on earth I would rather be than right here, right now. That says a lot. And I need to tell anybody that wants to listen to it. Because at the end of the day, that's exactly what we're supposed to do. Continue to bear that witness. Simple prayer, folks. You can do it on your knees. You can stand up. I don't care where you do it. I don't think God cares either. There's a lot of, discussion around that. But I don't think it's important. I think it's what's in your heart. There's a great old quote somebody sent me the other day. It says, pray with disbelief, but pray with sincerity, and belief will come. I like that. Those of you that are just getting on this path and don't have a lot of evidence that it happens, that it's real, just let's do it. Let's give it a shot. This little prayer is real simple. Even if you're not there, I'm going to read this little prayer, folks, and then we'll end with that. And y'all, again, I'll mention it to you at the close here. At the end of all these talks, my email again and my phone number is there. And if you've got any questions, or you want me to send you some information on a particular topic, man, let me be of service to you. You're holed up in your house and can't get out, buddy. Let's study some history. I'll help you any way I can. So just know this, that everybody here at La Hacienda is behind you, and we love you to death. So don't be a stranger. Okay, y'all ready? God, I offer myself to Thee, to build with me and do with me as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always! Exclamation point. Thanks, guys. See y'all next week.